Good evening. Planning and Zoning Board meeting for March 7, 2023. Called to order. Can we have a roll call?
Board Member Mata,
Here.
Board Member Dominguez. Here. Board Member Hibbert Smith. Present. Board Member Barnes. Board Member Johnson. Chairman Guerrero.
Present.
Attendance confirmed.
We can stand for the invocation and pledge. Heavenly Father, we ask for your wisdom as we begin this meeting so that we may engage in meaningful discussion and help our city move forward in a positive way. Amen. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, okay. I'm just kidding.
Can we have a motion for the approval of the minutes from the January 10 meeting?
Move it.
Second, I don't know. A second, yeah. Roll call.
Okay, Board Member Mata.
Present.
So we're voting on the approval of the reading minutes. It's either yes or no.
Sorry about that. I thought he was saying that. Proof.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you. Okay, Board Member Hibbert Smith.
Approved, yes.
Board Member Dominguez.
Yes.
Chairman Guerrero.
Yes.
Minutes approved.
That'll bring us to item number 1 in the agenda.
The first item on the agenda this evening is a resolution of the Planning and Zoning Board of the City of Opa-locka, Florida, recommending approval of the final site plan request from Hernandez Development Services LLC for the construction and operation of a 4-story self-storage facility building that will provide approximately 1,200 storage units, provide the required parking spaces, and provide covered loading spaces for convenience at 14301 Northwest 27th Avenue and identified by folio 082122000050 in the B3 zoning district, providing for an effective date.
Thank you. We have the applicant for their presentation.
Evening, everyone. Graham Penn. Am I loud enough? Hopefully, that's a little bit better. Burke Howardell, Fernandez, Larkin, Tappan 200 South Biscayne Boulevard here representing Hernandez Development Services LLC. Can we put my slides up, guys? I'll take everyone through our presentation. We have our front row, a little bit in our second row. We have the Hernandez team. We also have our architect Fernando Silva here and Nelson Ortiz, our engineer. As staff indicated, this application seeks site plan approval and acceptance of a development agreement. That's item 2. I'm going to take you through both of those items now in our presentation, and we can answer questions on both of them at your will. So these approvals are for modern self-storage use on this property. We think that this will be a significant improvement to this property and a benefit to this area. It will actually provide a beneficial service here, with very limited impacts. And I'm going to talk about the impacts as we get there. As part of this application, as staff has required us to do, we have sent letters to all the surrounding property owners when we file this application, and we're unaware of any objections to the applications. Next slide, please. Property at issue is in blue on your screen. You can see it is very long and is very narrow. It's north of State Road 9 on the northeast corner of 27th Avenue. Surrounding us is largely intense commercial or industrial style development. To our southeast, you can see across the State Road 9 right of way, there's more commercial uses in there. The school, which is the large lot there. Next slide. This shows you a little bit of a close-up of the existing property right now. It has a very small 1960s construction building there on the bottom left side of your image. The rest of the property, as you'll see, is used right now for open lot storage. It's got a lot of trailers and trucks and equipment that's open lot there. And, you know, if you pass there in the last couple of days, you see that's the status quo remains. That's the current business. We are, as staff indicated, we're zone B3. It's 2.2 acres in size. Next slide. I'm going to take you just a couple of views of the existing status quo. There's your building that's on the property right now. You can see the rest of the building, the rest of the property is taken up with open lot storage uses. There are very few trees or any kind of landscaping on this property right now that weren't there accidentally. You see the trees that are in front of you, right in the front of the building, are pretty much, that's all that's on the site right now. Next slide. This is a view from the interior walking to the east. Again, you can see all of that area is asphalt and it's all open lot storage right now. Next slide. This is a view looking northwest from State Road 9. And again, it's actually more dire looking today if you've passed it. All you see are trailers and open storage. Again, that's the use that exists on the property today, which is a giant difference you'll see when we show you what we're proposing to do. Next slide. So we think there are three main benefits to this plan. First, it's introducing a beautiful building, a beautiful modern building that includes Moorish design elements that I'll show you when we get through it. Second, equally important, significant site improvements, modernizing this property for the first time again in its history. It hasn't been touched really since the 1960s, aside from those repairs, et cetera. So this will be the first time since then it'll be improved, and a reduction in external impacts. And what I mean by that is getting rid of the open lot uses, removes the visual, the noise, et cetera. And this use has a unique nature in that it has a very limited external traffic impact. And I'll show you that when we get there. So onward, next slide. So this is a view of the rendering view looking to the east across 27th Avenue. So the basics of the building are 4-story self-storage with a office serving the use in there. It's a total of 146,000 square feet with 59 parking spaces. Next slide. This is the plan view. You can see what we're doing here is utilizing the length of the property, and the building itself is very long and skinny against the railroad. We are creating brand new landscape space here. We're finally adding code required parking here, required fencing, and the building, as you see, is actually very attractive and modern design. Next slide. Talking about landscaping, we're adding 53 new trees and about 400 shrubs to the property as part of the landscaping plan. So again, we're finally bringing this property up to modern city standards for landscaping, as well as all the other zoning elements. There are no variances in this application. Next slide. As I alluded to before, this project will have incredibly limited impacts for two reasons. First, the nature of these uses has very little traffic. Our traffic study indicated that in the PM peak on your Monday through Friday evening commute, you're looking at 18 cars or trucks going in and out of that property, 18. So that's just about 1 every 3 minutes you would be generating a car, which is a very low ratio for this size of a building. And the nature of the traffic is important as well. We're talking about, this is essentially a use that is accessed by the general public. It's not a warehouse that has trucks going in and out of it. So people that are coming in and using the self-storage will be driving their personal vehicles. They're driving their cars, their SUVs, or maybe a U-Haul. So you lose all of that kind of truck traffic that you would have with other B3 and other industrial uses. It's just not there. Next slide. One of the great new innovations, and Mr. Gay and Mr. Lee have worked on this for a long time, is implementing the modern Moorish design elements in new development, right? We know what a traditional kind of Moorish elements are, the minarets, the et cetera. But how do you apply that in a modern context, a modern architecture? And the city has really come up with a great way of implementing that. And we're implementing that in this plan. I'll show you 3 of the elements that we're using. Next slide. First, we have a perforated metal screen on the front of the building, as you can see right there, that emulates what you'll see in, again, a lot of traditional Moorish architecture, given where it's from, uses shade structures and that use of shadow with holes in those kind of elements. So that's our number 1 element. Number 2. Oh, sorry. Next slide. I keep thinking I'm in control. Next, we have ribbed vertical metal panels that will be installed up and down the entire facade. You can see that's not just in front, it goes around and all along State Road 9. So it's going to be a attractive element that goes throughout the building. Next slide. Third element is diamond shaped textured concrete. That's on the bottom level. You see there, those little areas there. That is a 3D material that is actually concrete to repeat that, to avoid a blank facade and really add those Moorish elements. Next slide. That's what the texture concrete looks like in situation. So that is going to be repeated along the facade along State Road 9 and 27th Avenue. So it's going to really bring some interest to this building. We think it's a great application of that policy. Next slide. So our second part of this application is the development agreement, which is not surprising to any of you. You've seen these multiple times. Every site plan application needs an accompanying development agreement. And this one, as all the others, establishes permitting and construction deadlines to ensure that the project moves forward. It includes operational requirements for a day-to-day operation. Importantly, it includes continuing obligations of maintenance, which will allow the city to apply that moving forward, given this is a recorded document. In the event that there is an issue with maintenance, the city has this document to rely on to enforce it. And of course, one of the newer additions to the development agreement is the requirement of employment outreach to help residents of the city of Opa-locka obtain jobs in any of these projects. So that is all in this development agreement, which is consistent with the city's typical document. Next slide. And that's the final slide. So again, our entire team is here to answer any questions you may have. We're excited to bring this application forward. We're excited for this development and this redevelopment in this important corner of the city to move forward. So we're here for any questions. I'd like to reserve time for rebuttal. I don't think it's going to be necessary, but I will if we have to. And we'd ask for your recommendation of approval tonight. Thank you.
Any questions? Yeah.
Yes, I have a question. If you can go back to the slide where it shows the modern Moorish style, is this supposed to be the modern?
Well, that is one of the elements. So we are, as the city has guidelines to apply Moorish type design elements to modern developments. We've seen it. There's another warehouse development did it where they used tile, to put it in front of, again, it's difficult to take a modern warehouse or commercial building and make it look like it's the traditional, like the old city hall. So this is what, and I think it's a very clever way of applying these things. We're using texturing and different surfaces to mirror that in a modern development. And that's been done elsewhere in the city already. So we're not the first to do it, but we think it's a great way to finally bring that requirement forward into modern developments.
Any other questions? All right. Can we hear from staff?
Good evening. Sorry. Good evening, Gerald Lee, City of Opa-locka Planning and Community Development Department. This is an exciting development because that has long been a property that was underutilized. And we're expecting the realization of an improved development at this site that has been presented very well by Attorney Penn. Next slide. This development is in compliance with the city's land development regulations. Next slide, please. And so as we review the site plan, this project covers all of the elements that are important. It is in compliance for setbacks, building heights, for parking, for landscaping. I'm not going to belabor the point because he made a very decent presentation. And our aspect of this review is that this project is in compliance with the land development regulations. Next slide, please. You know the location already. Next slide. Okay. What I want to emphasize is that the development does everything that it used to do. And more important, the fact that this particular development is going to incorporate landscaping on a level that has not been in that property forever, not in my experience. It's also going to increase the fact that would be going to a place where there is special technology at that point. Should I say road 9 coming into 27th Avenue? You got Burlington Street on the west side of that market. And you got the north and south on 27th Avenue. So I don't know.
You may have turned your mic off.
Okay, there's a lot going on, but what is going on this site will be a beautiful 4-story building. It's going to be adequate parking. It's not going to be short. They're not asking for any variances. They're not asking for any special considerations. They're providing everything our code requires. And then at the same time, the landscaping that's going to be on this property is going to be fantastic. It's going to drain well. It's going to look good. I don't mean to be their cheerleader, but I'm just saying, I see a property that's not being used well, and now it's going to be well and within what the code requires. This site plan is nice. It's a nice site plan, and I'm pleased to be able to speak about it because it's a long-standing need in the community to have something great be developed here. And at least this is not something that is going to require zoning changes or some special exception kind of thing or conditional use that would not be in agreement with what was compatible in the area. Okay, next slide, please. That's the location. Next slide. Okay, you've seen the picture. Next slide. Okay, another aspect. Next slide. Okay, one more time. What I wanted to show from this is the compatibility of this use. If you notice, to the north are industrial uses. To the south, there's a school and there's commercial. Right on the south side of that corridor that leads into State Road 9. On the west side of 27th Avenue, you've got commercial and industrial uses. And then to the to the northwest, there's commercial and residential. This fits perfectly within that because this use is a use that's compatible to residential. And so we have residential and commercial uses nearby, and then a lot more residential to the south and to the west on Alibaba and to the south of Alibaba. So the opportunity for persons to take advantage of this new business venture is perfect. Next slide, please. Staff recommends that we approve this development. That's my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Lastly, they are going to comply with the city's land development regulations for parking and landscaping and setbacks and building heights. Did I say that once? Absolutely. Amen.
So you're for it.
We recommend approval.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lee.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
for the record, we did receive a communication from the Department of Transportation in regards to this particular application. We received an email from a Mr. Sabre Raka, who is with the Department of Transportation, and he had some points that he wanted to have expressed on the record. Basically, the departmental feedback, there was a committee that was informed at the beginning regarding this non-binding meeting according to state statute and based on the information provided for the proposed work. And the committee needed to apply, the applicant would need to apply for the following types of permits. Access permit for the proposed entrance to the development, a drainage permit for on-site drainage work, utility permit for the utility connections on either end of State Road 9, and a landscaping permit for any proposed landscaping within the Florida Department of Transportation right-of-way or any removal or relocation of trees currently located within the FDOT right-of-way. For access permit, please include the paving and grading and signage and markings, erosion control plan sheets, as well as the cross section of the driveways. And there's a checklist that will provide all the documents required for those permits to be provided for the permittee. Also, there was information regarding the whole process being done online through the website. And there were some points that they wanted to basically make sure that were placed on the record as it relates for the traffic operations feedback. Number one, at the subject property, State Road 817 Northwest 27th Avenue is an access class 5 roadway with the posting of 35 miles an hour. The subject parcel appears to have a potential access only through the state road given the roadway network and the rail corridor. The proposed access along Northwest 27th Avenue is 67% plus or minus variance to the standards and will need to obtain an approval from the AMRC. I guess they have a special committee, especially given its proximity to the railroad crossing. Point 4, a trip generation statement should be furnished to gauge the trips that will be subject to the development generation. The trip generation will determine the driveway category and needs for the radius turn driveway. And point 5, also given that it is a self-storage facility with potential for truck traffic, suggest considering a longer driveway length, 25 feet as shown on the site plan. So these are some of the points that they had expressed to the development group regarding the concerns that the Department of Transportation had. And as you can see through their presentation, they did address many of those particular concerns, but there still may be some that are outstanding, and they will have to go through those particular processes in order to obtain those particular permits through the Department of Transportation.
Thank you, Mr. Gay. Question? Any questions?
If there's any questions, staff will address them at this time.
Yeah, so basically what you're stating is that many have been addressed, but not all in this before we can make an approval, or some have to.
Some of them are actually permits that they will obtain through the permitting process. So
Okay.
once they go through this particular board and they're approved by the city commission, at the time of permitting, they will have to go through those particular processes and obtain those particular permits from the Department of Transportation.
Okay, thank you.
And we have a motion on item number 1.
Move it.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, if we
Yes.
may open this to the public to see if there are any public comments.
Oh, okay. All right, public hearing is open for item number 1.
Hello, my name is Nikisha Williams, 1200 Jan Ave, Opa-locka, Florida, 33054. So one, this is exciting. Love a lot of this. Have some thoughts and considerations for the board. So my first obvious question as a resident of Opa-locka is the Moorish architectural design. So currently there are very minimal architectural design standards. I know that you mentioned that this is a part of the city's modern Moorish architecture design standards, which I'd really love to see. But I think one of the things that many residents here are interested in seeing is one, just making sure that the Moorish architecture continues to live on. And I would love if the board would consider and think about how we encourage them to make sure that that shines through a little bit more. The building is a block building with a couple of, I think you mentioned kind of the concrete design. I can imagine how hard that would be, how hard it would be to see that and to really understand that that's Moorish design. So I would really encourage the board to perhaps consider pushing this firm a little bit harder to make sure that they're adhering to architectural designs that really stands out and continues to showcase the Moorish architecture in Opa-locka. I would also add that love that you guys are adding lots of trees to the property. I don't know if it is within this board's purview to dictate, but it would be interesting to make sure that we are encouraging them to add trees that provide shade in our community. So I'm sure everyone here knows that Miami is heating up. A lot of the world is heating up. We are dealing with extreme heat here. And so if we're going to put in some trees, we want to make sure that they're not just palm trees that look nice. We want to make sure that at the end of the day, it is beneficial to our residents and it is helping to cool our city. And then my last question is I'd love to understand what does the employee outreach entail? Lots of companies come here and say that they're going to do employee outreach and that does not truly benefit our community. So I'd love to understand what the plan is to make sure that you are recruiting folks from the city of Opa-locka. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I don't know if the applicant wants to touch on the employee outreach program to answer the question.
Very good questions. I'm not, the development agreement requirements have become standardized in that every project comes through and there's a set of requirements that everyone has to comply with to notify the availability of jobs, coordinating with the relevant agencies. I don't have that language in front of me right now, and perhaps Mr. Gay can help us, or the city attorney. But so that is formalized in every development agreement. As the landscaping plan includes significant number of shade trees. It's not just palm trees. We have a lot of live oaks, et cetera, being placed wherever we can. So we've tried to fill this very skinny property with as many trees as we can get in there while still being able to operate a business. And third, as to the architecture elements, this is and the reason we're excited about this is because we need to balance the needs of a modern building with trying to call back to that Moorish architectural elements. And I think what the city has arrived at is a good way to do that in these kind of, frankly, square, modern, industrial type buildings is to add those surfacing elements where you can. So the buildings that have been built, you might have seen them, are using tile in portions of their facade. We have all three separate different elements that we're including on the entire facade to make it active, to make it a attractive building that's not just a big flat surface, and to call back to those Moorish kind of patterning requirements. So that has been the direction that the city has gone in, that we're implementing to balance the Moorish design without trying to build some kind of a Disneyland style building that's just not honest. It's not an honest architectural structure if you're trying to, gussy it up with minarets, et cetera. So that is the kind of the modern direction that has been taken to implement that architectural style. And I will give you some more details about the development agreement hiring requirements, but it's in every one of these development agreements is required. That's all I have.
Thank you.
I do agree with Ms. Williams. That's why I asked the question to see the building again, because I did not see any Moorish style. I mean, it's modern, it's beautiful. I love the building and the area. I think it's gonna clean the area. It's gonna make it look nice. However, this is something that once it goes to the commission, they're gonna question the same thing we're questioning. Why doesn't it have like a Moorish style? At least the front. I mean, why is it that difficult? Is it that difficult to accomplish to get at least the front or some part of it to have a Moorish style? I mean,
what we believe that we are implementing that through the patterning, right? And that is what's been done in similar modern buildings. Sure. If we could bring up the slides, we can take you through it again. Sure. And again, if the direction of this board is for us to, between now and the commission, to look into that further, we have no problem in reviewing it further. I think but we think that what we've done is try to get to that goal with the limits of a modern building. So you guys can go to all the way to the, keep going, but we'll get a close-ups towards the end. I'll tell you when to stop. We actually have more renderings that I didn't even show you. So you keep going past the and there's a couple more renderings I want to show. Keep going to the end. Keep going. One more. Okay, so this is the rest of the rendering package. One more. I think you can see a little bit all down the building, but you can see, I mean, this is a little bit further away, but you can see the whole idea of those patterns repeating along the building with those, that concrete diamond shape on the bottom, the vertical fins, and then especially on the front with that shade structure. Those are the three elements that are designed to bring in that kind of modern Moorish element. It's not going to look like City Hall, but this is a building that has to function as a modern building. That's why we're proposing to do it in this fashion. And that's consistent with those guidelines that the city has established for modern architecture. But again, we have absolutely no issue with the idea of this board recommending that we, look at enhancing that.
yes, I
as
think
we
that
move
would be
forward.
good because I don't see and I love the building, believe me, it's beautiful. And I would agree with it and approve it, but I don't see the Moorish style nowhere. I mean, the bricks, I think it's beautiful, but it's nothing that looks like a Moorish style, at least here in Opa-locka. But I do like the building. I think it's gonna, bring value and beauty to the city.
Mhm.
So.
Mr. Chair, members of the board. As it relates to the question that was brought up regarding employment opportunities, which is spoken about within the development agreement, which is actually the next item that you'll be hearing. Just to bring to your attention on page 115 and 116, starting at the bottom, it's within section 9, number 1. And it says cooperate with the city on any city initiated effort in the area of economic development and educational organizations, including the Beacon Council, the Meek Foundation, Miami-Dade Public Schools, and Miami-Dade College, and to expand vocational and technical training for the residents. And that will be within the period from going through December 31st of 2024. And in section 2, it says recruiting, employ qualified applicants who are city residents through the assistance of Career Source of South Florida offices in coordination with the city of Opa-locka, and encourage the contractors retained to develop the project to do the same as follows: preparing and providing the city with an outreach plan that outlines the owner's anticipated commercially reasonable efforts to provide construction-related and permanent jobs to Opa-locka residents prior to the issuance of the first building permit for the vertical construction within the property's outreach plan. Said outreach plan at a minimum shall require a local job fair. Local and shall mean that it's held within the municipal boundaries of the city of Opa-locka herein. And the local job fair be held as described herein shall be outlining job training opportunities within the project. Host or require the general contractors to also host a local job fair and provide a list of construction jobs openings to the city to post on the city's website prior to the issuance of the first building permit for vertical construction. And these are pretty much the points that are a part of the development agreement that speak toward the education, training, and eventual job placement for residents within the city of Opa-locka.
Thank you, Mr. Any other questions?
What are we doing to ensure that they're following those guidelines? What I'm hearing is that we know it's in the development agreement, but people are not still hiring or giving opportunity to the residents of the city of Opa-locka. So what are we doing internally to make sure that they are abiding by those rules and regulations? Like, do we have something in place to come back and say, okay, you know, where are these people living? Are they really in, you know, the city of Opa-locka? And they're not just saying, not to say that you're just saying that, but what I'm hearing her say is that we know it's here, but we're not abiding by it. So what measurements do we have to go back and check to see if they're actually adhering to those rules?
Board member Hibbert, that's a good question. One that our particular department has been challenged with, since we are the ones that pretty much monitor and maintain what particular activities are occurring in relationship to these development projects. I can tell you that since we have strengthened the language within our development agreements, one of the things that is required is for them to provide an annual report. And within that annual report, they will describe all of the activities that have occurred each year in relationship to all aspects of the development agreement. And it will also focus specifically on their hiring practices. Now, at the same time, we cannot require them to hire Opa-locka residents, but at least give the opportunity and give them the chance to basically see if there's an opportunity for them to become an employee or a contractor or being a part of the project overall. So we do monitor that particular aspect. One thing that we have done is also worked with the development team. And if they have a public relations firm, we try to get in contact with that particular public relations firm and helping them to have those particular job fairs or job recruitment activities at city facilities. So I know recently we worked with another developer. We actually had a job fair program held at Shabundi. So we're working very closely with them to see if there's an opportunity for residents within the city of Opa-locka to have that opportunity to be employed with these particular projects.
Could I add one more element that's in the development agreement itself, and Mr. Gay read it, is that the local job fair has to happen prior to the issuance of the first building permit. So the city has the power over the issuance of permits, obviously. So If that job fair has not occurred, then the permit should not issue. So that is a powerful hook into any property owner, right? When you're holding their permits based on the failure to do something. So obviously our team is incited to implement it regardless. We don't need the threat of a permit hold, but that is an important tool that the city has built into these development agreements that it never had before. These job requirements are relatively new, as rewritten. So it used to be a lot, as Mr. Gay said, these documents used to be a lot softer, for lack of a better word, on these, and now there is a direct hook of building permit issuance for these fairs. So on the employment side, I think it's a significantly stronger document. And I can tell you, as someone who practices throughout South Florida, this development agreement is one of the strongest on any of those local hiring requirements I've ever seen. You don't see these kind of requirements in a lot of other places. So I think the city, in moving that policy forward is doing a great benefit to the residents by requiring this of every developer. And again, these are new. So if you're thinking 5 years ago, 10 years ago, these requirements did not exist. Sorry to take up more time.
Thank you. So we have a motion. You want to amend it?
Well, yes, regarding the Moorish style, I think that we should really encourage them to make a change at least before the construction or after the ending of the, because if it comes to the commission, they're going to question the same thing as far as the Moorish style. So I think we need to implement it.
I agree with the gray.
And it seems like the more she really popped up and we can choose.
Sorry, could you please speak in the mic? Thank you.
Oh, it's not on.
Do you believe that the color of the building is affecting the Moorish look? Gray, reds tend to flow with more Art Deco, more modern, which could be adding to how you feel about not really viewing the Moorish look.
No, I don't think it's the color. I think it's like other buildings that we see here that have that Moorish look. I don't think it's the color. The color is fine to me. And I don't know if maybe they're just following how they have other storage units set up and maybe they're just following the same, but I don't know here in Opa-locka. I think they should follow at least the Moorish style that we have here in other buildings.
Is there a requirement from the Cube Smart, I believe, for
Regarding
it to
color?
have a certain design as well?
And I don't know, I'll ask Fernando to confirm that if I'm wrong, but the big elements of the Q Smart obviously are for their branding are the color, which of course is a no-go for them. And of course their logo and the signage. The elements that I discussed were not part of this design before we filed this application, before we talked to staff, right? So what we've added is as a direct response to the request from the administration. If none of those three elements existed. So what we're trying to do is in the context of, again, a modern building with modern design, architecture, and the use, and of course, our limits based on the tenant to come up with a program that incorporates those elements. And that's why we think we've done. Now, again, as I said earlier, if the recommendation of this body is for us to further refine that as a recommendation, we have no objection to look at that and see what we can do. But if you notice, there are the other examples that have done this in the city have done it with a building that is modern and industrial looking, but used surfacing, tile, other elements like that to add that Moorish element. So we're not the first through the gate on that. And that's why we follow that example, because again, we're trying to navigate between the obligations of modern use and modern design and that desire to call back to the Moorish elements. So that's why we chose what we did. But again, as I said earlier, if that's the will of the board, Obviously, that's a little bit.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
What was the motion? I'm sorry.
She motion to approve with the, that they look into the Moorish architecture, work with staff on that.
Mr. Chair, if I
Yes.
may make a suggestion, I believe what's being requested would be a motion to approve with enhancements to the Morris design, not with the design that's currently presented by the applicant this evening. They have agreed to do that. So prior to this going to the commission, they should work with staff to further enhance the Morris design so it's consistent with other buildings here in the city of Opa-locka.
That sounds great. Thank
Yeah.
you. So I moved it, so
We need a second.
I'll second that.
Right, roll call.
Board Member Mata,
Approve.
Board Member Hibbert Smith,
No.
Board Member Dominguez,
yes.
Chairman Guerrero,
Yes.
item passed.
Item number 2.
The next item this evening is a resolution of the Planning and Zoning Board of the City of Opa-locka, Florida, recommending approval of the development agreement from Hernandez Development Services LLC for the construction and operation of a 4-story self-storage facility building that will provide approximately 1,200 storage units, provide the required parking spaces, and provide covered loading spaces for convenience at 14301 Northwest 27th Avenue and identified by folio 08-2122-000-0050 in the B3 zoning district, providing for an effective date.
Okay, thank you.
And just for the record, Graham Penn, Burke, Howardell, Fernandez, Larkin, Tappan is 200 South Biscayne Boulevard. I gave you the presentation on this item already, so I'm going to refrain from speaking again. But again, we're here for any questions regarding the development agreement.
Yes, I'd like to ask a question. How long will it take for this project to be complete?
From start to finish.
Yes,
We
yes,
have a
sir.
Hernandez team member who can give me some.
I do apologize, sir. You would have to come
Gerard.
and say your name within the record. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Gerald Sequeira. And I would like to answer the question. We would probably be, everything is tentative at the moment, but it should be around a year to complete the project from start to finish. Okay. Yes, start of construction.
Okay.
The other thing that you will be seeing, once we get through the commission, we're going to be coming back with the plat. So that's going to be, once that's done, then we can go get the plat approved by the county and come back and get the final plat. So there's work to be done between then and now. But yeah, as Gerard said, once we're free to go, and it takes us about a year to build it.
Thank you. Any other questions with reference to the development agreement? Anything else from staff on the development agreement?
Gerald Lee, Planning and Community Development Department. This development agreement is something that the department is pretty proud of, that we have implemented and included language that addresses economic development. It addresses the annual report that's going to be necessary. And those things are the things that the entire city benefits from, the improvements that are coming to the city. So we're excited about this plan, and the document that you have before you is still not a finalized document. It still has to go before the commission with whatever their recommendations are And after it's approved, then it'll be executed and recorded. So this is a pretty arduous process, but it's very standard. The agreement only includes new information per the development that is at hand. But the other parts on the economic and the job fairs and those things, those are going to be standards as we go forward. So we're very excited about it. And we're looking forward to this development coming forward. The city planning and zoning department recommends approval. And we'd like to see this project begin. Questions?
Any questions for staff? Thank you, Mr. Lee. We get a motion for item number 2.
Yes,
Oh,
sorry, Mr. Chair, you
keep
have to open
skipping.
it up for public comment again.
sorry. All right, public hearing open.
Nikisha Williams again, 1200 Jan Avenue, Opa-locka, Florida, 33054. So just a couple of thoughts. So I would implore us not to continue to fall on the idea that this agreement is standard or that the design looks similar to other buildings. Just because things have not been done correctly in the past does not mean that's how we should continue moving forward. I think that it is possible that something isn't working in our development agreements. There is perhaps no accountability. So I would encourage us to really look at how we're going about this. A couple of thoughts that I have. So one, we should consider requiring that any company that's coming in show proof of their local hiring at other facilities to show how they're hiring local employees, because oftentimes that can dictate what they're going to do in our community. I'm glad to hear that businesses are required to submit an annual report. I would just question who is reviewing that annual report. Is that coming back to the board so that there's some accountability? You all know what is happening. And then I would just encourage us, I don't know if it's possible to include this in the current development agreement, but can we follow up 1 year after the opening to understand how many Opa-locka residents are interviewed and how many are hired? Again, it seems like something's perhaps not working in our development agreement. And if we don't have the information, then we actually can't make a change. And so I would just encourage us to just rethink about what we're doing, what information we're receiving at the end of these developments, and how we're using that information to have a greater impact and change on the residents of Opa-locka. Thank you.
Thank you.
Assuming no other members of the public, I'd just like to address Ms. Williams' comments briefly. And as I alluded to earlier, the job requirements, the job fair requirements, this new enhanced document is new. So if we're looking again at projects that were approved 4 years ago, 3 years ago, et cetera, they won't have these requirements imposed upon them. So we are in the last, what has it been, a year since this has been added or less? So those projects are probably not even before you getting permits or before the city getting permits yet. So I think that this, again, is the strongest language you see in a uniform fashion in any jurisdiction in South Florida that I've ever seen. No other local government requires every development that comes in front of them to take these steps. So I think Opa-locka is way out ahead of anyone in requiring this of every uniformly requiring this of every application. So I think that, and of course the monitoring is in here. Of course, the proof is in the pudding when these agreements start getting tested. But the annual report requirement, very useful. The fact that you have to get you have to do the job fair before you get a building permit, incredibly useful, because you've got the property owner on the hook at the moment that they're most incentivized to act, and at the right time for getting people employed, because that's when the building's going up, right? And most of the jobs associated with any of these uses are that construction period. So again, obviously, we have to make sure that all citywide that these agreements are monitored. But I think that from my point of view, as someone who does this everywhere in South Florida, This language is the strongest I've seen uniformly applied, and I think it's got the hooks into every developer, not just us, to make sure that they make good faith efforts on the employment front. So that's all. I appreciate it. Ask for your approval tonight, recommendation of approval of this document.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may add one more comment for Ms. Williams as well as for the board. As Attorney Pennant stated, this is up to management. This is up to the city manager. This is up to the building official. This is up to the planning department to monitor these agreements and to make sure they're complied with. The language is here legally to set forth what those requirements are. As Mr. Penn stated, you don't issue a building permit if they haven't complied with these conditions. That's one of the most important hammers the city has in addressing developers. So this is a question for management to make sure they're held accountable, participate, look on the website, make sure the job fairs are posted, have this conversation when this goes before the commission, and just follow up and make sure local residents are aware this project is coming forward. There will be job opportunities. Stay aware, go on the website and check and make sure they're following through. So continue to be engaged as a resident, but this is up to management and the various department heads to make sure they comply with this before they receive a CO for this building.
Thank you. Have a motion?
Move it.
Second. Roll call.
Board Member Matta,
Approve.
Board Member Hibbert Smith,
Yes.
Board Member Dominguez,
Yes.
Chairman Guerrero,
Yes.
item passed.
Thank you so much for your time. I
you.
appreciate it.
Okay, item number 3 on the agenda.
The next item on the agenda this evening is a resolution of the Planning and Zoning Board of the City of Opa-locka, Florida, recommending tentative plat approval for the construction and operation of an industrial and commercial mixed-use retail and warehouse distribution facility on the property located at 12691 Northwest 42nd Avenue and 12705 Northwest 42nd Avenue, Opa-locka, Florida, 33054, identified by folios 082129 000 0050 and 082129 000 0064 in the B3 zoning district, providing for an effective date.
Do we have the applicant?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Jane Storms with.
See if your mic is on.
It's green, but I talk kind of soft. I'll try to talk louder. Is that better? There we go, like this.
I can
Sorry.
hear you.
Jane Storms, Police Land Surveyors, 5381 Nob Hill Road, Sunrise, Florida, for the applicant. I'm here respectfully asking approval for your tentative plat application for project, the flea market that you've already approved the site plan for in December. And now we're done with the site plan and we're moving on to the tentative plat application so we can get started and get building. Once you approve it, I have to get Miami-Dade County to approve the tentative plat and then come back for building permits and final plat. It's pretty much an administrative function. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to help.
Any questions? Can we hear from staff? Thank you.
Gerald Lee, Planning and Community Development Department. This is, as Ms. Storm indicated, this project was approved previously by the City Commission for site plan review and for the development agreement. It is the redevelopment of the properties that made up the former flea market property site on 42nd Avenue, between that and the connector. A part of the requirements of Miami-Dade County, Chapter 28, is to do a platting process for properties that are not joined, but are joined through the site plan. And so to make this one contiguous property, it has to go through this process. And the beginning of that process is the tentative plat, which she is applying for. So in concert with what the Miami-Dade County Code requires and the city requires, she has submitted for the developer a tentative plat. And that process requires approval from this board and the city commission. And then this whole plat survey goes to the county and they work out all of the details and it comes back to us as a final plat. And this is the beginning of that process. And once the final plat is approved, it becomes one property. So as a part of the process to get this done, they are bringing their request. Staff recommends approval so that they can do the development that they're already beginning, but they want it to be whole when they finish. So staff recommends approval.
Any questions for staff? Yeah, we'll open the public hearing. We'll skip it this time. Nobody? Close public hearing. Can we have a motion?
Move it.
I second.
Roll call?
Okay, just for clarification, it was moved by Board Member Dominguez and it was seconded by Board Member Hibbert Smith.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Mata.
Approve.
Okay, Board Member Hibbert Smith,
Approved.
Board Member Dominguez,
Yes.
Chairman Guerrero,
Yes.
item approved. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Sorry, it wasn't as exciting as the site plan, just kind of boring.
Thank you.
We have the next item.
Board members of the Planning and Zoning Board, we had the great opportunity of moving forward with our updating of our comprehensive master plan. And as a part of that exercise, we had to do what is called an evaluation and appraisal report. We hired the company of Calvin Giordano and Associates to do an RFP process to take us through this particular exercise in order for us to be in compliance with the state of Florida, the Department of Economic Opportunity. We have with us today Mr. Alex David, who is the project manager for this particular project. So he's going to take you through a series of presentations. We do have some boards that are also distributed on the other side of the chambers for you to review as well. But this is a process that we're going to be going through for about the next 6-7 months in order for the city to be compliant with the state statutes. So I present to you, Mr. Alex David.
Good evening, board members. My name again is Alex David, and I'm with Calvin Giordano and Associates with my address at 2103 Coral Way. Joining me tonight, way in the back, is Carla Ebenbach. She's part of our consultant team for this project, and we're excited to have her with us tonight. I'm going to run through the slides, but we kind of set this up as a workshop. So at some point, we'd like you to look at the boards and we're going to ask you questions to get your feedback on this process with respect to the city's comprehensive plan. And you.
Yeah, me too.
It's not considered a workshop. This is a formal meeting. As part of this, the Planning and Zoning Board gets to hear the comp plan amendments and updates. So they're bringing this forward for them to consider, to get an update in the status and the process, as well as for the public. So there's no formal adoption on what he's going over, but it's information for the board, information for the public.
And as I said, as part of this, we're happy to answer any questions. Sorry, I've been talking a lot today, but we have Post-its and dots, excuse me, for you to put on the boards and just read about the project. Next slide is just a very quick slide. So the city is about 4.5 square miles, and obviously it has a lot of different types of uses, from industrial to residential, higher density residential, single family, and again, businesses and industrial. So it's a really mixed bag within the city. The population has increased since the last census, and it's just under 16,500. And I think the most exciting fact, and we're trying to work this in somehow, the city's 100th anniversary is coming up in 3 years. So we're going to try to come up with something that really shows that off. Next slide, please. There are a couple documents that I'm just bringing out. And I was actually part of this team that back in 2015, we created a downtown concept plan just to get some ideas from the public and from the city, how we want to see downtown Opa-locka grow. So basically it established some mixed use zoning districts to allow for shops and restaurants and multifamily apartment buildings and have that synergy in downtown Opa-locka. Next slide, please. 2 years ago, another study was commissioned that it was much more detailed, the downtown master plan for Opa-locka, but it did basically cover the same area. So it has more detailed guidelines as how to develop downtown. Next slide, please. Also in 2015, we worked on the new zoning code for the city. So that was adopted after the comprehensive plan, which was updated. Also, that was adopted. This came in, we rewrote the zoning code to make it more user-friendly, bring it up to date. So that's what you see before you, the new land development regulations. Next slide, please. So this is the document we're going to be updating per state law. We adopted the last comprehensive plan in 2015, so it is time for the review to happen. So we are going through, and I have a copy, my copy written, it's 150 pages, I believe, or so. So this is the document we will be updating. Next slide, please. So you're the Planning and Zoning Board, so I won't belabor this, but basically the comprehensive plan does include goals, objectives, and policies, the future vision for the city. So we will again be looking at that to make sure you are compliant with state statutes, and any new visions or thoughts you have for the city to bring it forward will be incorporated into the new document. Next slide, please. So basically the city aspired to be a successful, financially stable, full service community. That was one of the overarching goals of the original comprehensive plan, and we don't really see a need to change that much because that's where we're going. So again, we will take feedback from you all and the commission and the public on that. Next slide, please. So basically a future land use designation is kind of a more generic or general 30,000 foot look at property in the city. So the land use designations are single family or multifamily, commercial or industrial. So those are more general categories. Next slide, please. And this is your future land use map, which is part of your comprehensive plan. So that's again a general overview of the land uses in the city. Next slide, please. So again, zoning districts, your land development code has a specific zoning districts. So these are more detailed districts versus the general for a comprehensive plan land use designation. The zoning district has your standards in, we were talking about in the last project, the setbacks, the parking requirements, that's all part of your zoning code and in specific zoning districts. Next slide, please. And this is just your your zoning map. So we had that in, put that in this presentation. Next slide, please. So we've started public outreach for this project, and I did come before this board last year just to introduce myself and talk about what we were doing. And I did the same thing with the the commission in, I believe, January of this year. But we need to get guidance from citizens, business owners, residents, everyone in the city. We really want everyone to participate in this project. This is going to be, it's pretty fast moving, but we're getting the word out. We have flyers developed and it's on the website. And so we'll continue to take input from everyone we can. So we wanted, based on that, it's an interactive process. We want to tell the story of Opa-locka and make the new documents user-friendly, accessible to everyone, and have it be inclusive. So next slide, please. So there are a couple of things that we were looking at as part of this process: challenges, opportunities. How have we done? If there are certain goals or policies that we had to meet a certain goal, or like a percentage reduction in blighted housing, that was a goal or a policy. So we're going to be going in and seeing how we did to that. Did based on that policy, do we meet that goal? But we're also looking at sustainability. Property rights is a new requirement of the Florida statute. So we're going to be adding an element for that. We're updating the water supply plan that you all have in place and as part of this process. We are again looking at economic development and redevelopment, which is very important to the city. And look at growth. I mean, you are growing in population and industrial square footage of business. So it is a growing community. So we have to look at all of that as part of this project. Next slide, please. So it's kind of hard to read, but we've had we're doing several things simultaneously. We're meeting with you all, we're meeting with staff and reviewing the existing plan. We're also collecting data at this time to update what we need to update as part of the review of the plans and looking at other plans. I mentioned the downtown master plan, so that's going to be very important in our process. We're going to be eventually doing some community visioning. And then when we develop the plan, the last couple of steps are, we'll be coming back to you with a draft in several months. You'll make a recommendation to the commission will review it, and then we'll send it off to the state and bring it back for adoption. Next slide, please. So I think what I'm going to do is just kind of skip to the end, and then we'll go back and maybe ask these questions. I think that's probably a better way to handle this. So we have about 7 or 8 or 9 questions we'd like to ask you all, and we're going to write it down, your answers on the board. We'll just go through it and get what we can from you tonight, and then move on. Could you go to skip the next slide, I guess, and go to the next one after that? One more. Okay, so I briefly touched on the next step. So after this meeting tonight, we're going to be scheduling through the city clerk, meeting with the interim city manager and the commissioners individually to get their vision, also get their vision for the future of Opa-locka. We'll incorporate any comments that they have and you all have and the public has into the document. And as I said, we'll come back here for the formal hearing. You'll be sitting as a local planning agency, and you'll make a recommendation to the commission. So they'll hold a meeting, what's called the first reading of the document. That'll be shipped off to the State Department of Economic Development, the Water Management District, Miami-Dade County, your surrounding neighbors, and some other agencies like FDOT for their review and comment. Once that's all cooked and back in and we revise as necessary, the city commission will get a second stab at this document for adoption. And then we'll have a new plan. So with that, Carla, did you want to bring the board over here? We'll just get, I guess that's the easiest way. Then we could look at the boards we have set up maybe later. So I think Yeah, what's the best spot so we don't block? Yeah, the camera, so I don't know. And I can't see. Let's try that. So could you back up 2 slides, I guess, to the first set of, yep, perfect. Whoops. Well, they're moving the boards. I'm going to start, Carla. So are you ready to? Okay, so no right or wrong answer. We just, whatever you're thinking about, we just want to, have you start thinking. And again, reach out to staff if you think of something else, and we'll take it into account. So the first question is, what are the main challenges to Opa-locka's future growth and development? What do any of you see as the major challenge to the city? And it could be traffic, land to develop, anything that comes out of your thoughts. We'll start writing down.
As far as challenges, none come to mind. I mean, I've seen a lot of growth the past couple of years. Definitely need to address some of the issues that might be impeding that, but I've seen a lot of growth.
Okay.
I don't. That's not a bad, no, it's not a challenge. It's a comment. Do you have the figures on the census growth? I know it's 16,000 now, but do you have by how much we grew?
Well, okay, population wise, not
Population. Yeah, that's
the population is from 16, just over 16. So it's about 450 or something, and about 450 people was the growth in Opa-locka since between 2010 and 2020, I believe. It's something around that, 450 or so.
Well, there definitely needs to be more housing too. It's something that
We've seen housing developments come to the city. What I haven't seen is restaurants, supermarkets, which I always bring and ask the question, why is it that we don't have local supermarkets like Walmart or Publix, pharmacies? I mean, you have to go outside of Opa-locka to go. I know before we used to have Eckerd drugstore, which
I remember.
it was, yeah, I remember too. So, why is it that we can't get that here? We always have to go outside of the city to, entertainment, we should have for our children, maybe water slide parks or something for them, not to go outside. We don't have to go all the way to Orlando, for children to enjoy a park or water slide.
So just so you know, that's part of that downtown master plan. It addresses a lot of those issues, but this is good. This is what we want to hear from you. So Carla, you're gonna be tired. So would you say that those are challenges and opportunities to get something in? So you cut out maybe 1 or 2 questions, because I think that's what we'll combine those challenges and opportunities. So are there any other challenges or opportunities that you all see that the city faces? I'm sorry, the third one or the fourth? Downtown development forward. So what do you, I don't know if you're familiar with the downtown master plan, if it was presented to you. Mr. Gay, was it brought before them?
Okay. Yes, it was.
Okay. So I don't know if you're familiar.
This is
if you were-
2021? Is this
Yes,
the master?
yes.
Oh, I was there.
Okay, good.
I was there.
So then you're gonna, you're gonna take the lead on this one. What does Opa-locka need most to move downtown development forward? And I think you started answering the question.
Well, I like to know what has happened since 2021. We're in 2023. I want to know what has happened since then as far as moving this master plan. Because it seems like it's being repeated through the years, the same master plan, but I have not seen a lot, at least in that area. It was beautiful presented, and a lot of residents went. They were very happy to see what was going to happen, but we're in 2023 and I have not seen yet that master plan.
Well, if I can address that question, Board Member Dominguez, it is a very good question. And people are always concerned about what has happened when something is presented to them.
Right.
That was presented in 2021. Since that time, and I can tell you now, nothing physical has occurred, but there's been some instrumental movements as it relates to legislation. We did do a historic downtown zoning, which is a standalone zoning, which was something that was proffered as a part of the master plan itself. And as a result of that, the zoning has a greater level of density and intensity, but it also allows for the mixed uses to occur. And there were some properties that were zoned industrial within the downtown area. We were able to clean up that particular language to more so promote the commercial and residential uses within our downtown area. So that legislation allowed us to take one step further in moving toward our goal of developing a downtown. Secondly, over the summer and into the fall of 2022, we actually had what is called the Affordable Housing Initiative workshops. We had one in July and one in September. And it was through those particular workshops where we were able to engage the development community on some significant opportunities for development within not just within our downtown area, but looking throughout the entire city of Opa-locka. But there were several opportunities and some development teams expressed a very strong interest in looking at some properties, some that are city-owned and some that are privately owned. And we're looking at doing some type of either a public-private partnership or some type of joint venture to move those particular properties toward development. We're actually getting toward the end phase of that particular aspect where we opened it up to having unsolicited bids for some of the properties to be developed. And from those particular interests, we're evaluating those unsolicited bids to see which ones would be the best opportunity, whether it be through private ownership or public ownership, joint venture, to move those particular projects toward being developed. So I would say probably within the next 6 to 9 months, you're going to be hearing about actual projects, residential and mixed use, that are going to be proffered before you to go through a review process. So we're actually going through that winding down process so that we can make sure that the projects that are being presented are going to be the best projects for the city of Opa-locka. So that's what's occurred over the last 2 years. I can tell you now that hopefully over the next 2 to 3 years, and hopefully by the time we meet our centennial, you're going to see some projects coming out of the ground. And as many of you probably already know, everybody wants something to happen fast, but development is a slow process. Development takes time. If there's things that relates to modifications of the zoning code, or in this particular aspect, looking at land use, and we have to make those particular changes, we have to be positioned and ready to move on that. that's part of the whole impetus of us going through this evaluation and appraisal report. Because as it stands right now, yes, we can make zoning changes, but we can't make land use changes until this particular document is approved, not only by the city, but also by the state. So that's why we're trying to move in a very aggressive timeline, a very aggressive schedule. We're looking to have this whole exercise completed sometime during the summer or sometime in the fall, but definitely within this calendar year. So that as these projects begin to go through their paces of being reviewed by your board and other boards, we hope the timing will be as it would in sync with one another. So we will be in a good position to receive those projects, to make whatever modifications that we have to make in relationship to the zoning code or to the land use code in order to move those particular projects forward. So you're going to be hearing some things over the next 6 to 9 months of new projects and new developments being proposed.
Thank you, Mr. Gay. Yeah, just to jump on what he was saying, part of what was in the comprehensive plan is the monitoring measures. And what was in there is the city shall basically try to have 3 new mixed-use developments in the downtown area by 2025 or whatever it said. So we're gonna have to bump that out a bit, but the goal is still to get mixed-use developments in downtown. Like we said, the city created the downtown master plan, and part of our charge is to get that document into here so it strengthens what the city can do. Yeah, that's a document, but it's kind of hanging out here. If it's in here and in your zoning code, it's going to have a lot more teeth. So that's kind of the goal of one of the things we're doing. Anything else on downtown development? No? Okay, next question. You are on a board, but you're also on the outside. You're not part of the city staff or on the commission. So from the outside perspective, we're trying to get a feel for what the city can do better. What are the internal issues that you see, and what can the city do to better to move government along and get these things, these properties developed?
I'd say we should try to streamline the process and make it, something that like they say it takes a long time. We should try to look for ways to streamline the process, because there's a lot of interest now, but who's to say years from now the economy might downturn. I say, I've seen a lot of changes coming, a lot of interest, and we've been here for many projects that seem really good. I mean, but my personal opinion is I don't think it's going to last forever, the amount of activity going on now, given the whole economy. So I say we streamline to try to get as much as we can, so that, the city grows.
Right. And what Mr. Gay said is true. I work in a lot of cities, and some move at lightning speed, and others, I mean, it's been 4 years, 5 years to get something approved or, through, because things change. So
the question is, why is it taking the city of Opa-locka to take such a long time for land use? We've had people redo or rezone their land, and it hasn't taken 5 years. So why is it taking us 5 years, the city, to make such a?
It falls under staff administration. I mean,
that's what we're kind of asking, what if there's a bottleneck, kind of where is it from your, from your outside perspective? So, but I mean, I guess the long and short is streamlining these processes. And, the state process, you can't streamline it. It doesn't take years, but a certain number of days for review and all this other stuff. So that's kind of set, and that's a months long. If it takes longer than that, there may be issues, but basically we could look into that. And again, in your zoning code, the same thing.
You work for a lot of different cities.
Yeah.
What are they doing, and what can we implement? That, like, this is simple. Like,
So in some cities, and it doesn't work in all cities because I know it puts pressure. They have, if you have an application, say a development application, I'm not talking about the future land use or a zoning change, development application, there's a certain deadline within so many days, it has to be reviewed and get to their city commission.
So are you saying that we're taking a long time to review and get to city commission?
I do apologize. Mr. Alex, can you make sure your mic is on?
Oh, yeah, it's on. Sorry.
Okay,
I'm
okay. Thank
trying
you.
to look
Oh.
and, it's sometimes, I don't always do that right. Yeah, we could help staff look into that. It works, like I said, in some cities and others, it's just, it depends on the amount of development. If there's a lot of development and you're short-staffed, you're just not going to meet these goals. So, but I mean, there are ways to possibly streamline. So, we could look into
I
that.
say wherever we can, we try. That would be my input into it
Right.
because it would give us an edge.
Right.
While the demand is there.
Right.
As the director of planning and community development, and on behalf of my staff, I would like to add that we try to do things as aggressively as possible in getting information to the boards and to the commission. There have been times that we have been challenged in meeting quorum. And because we have not met quorum, that puts a delay on items being moved forward. That has definitely been not one of our biggest challenges, because we do have several challenges, but that has been one that has slowed up some development and it has frustrated some. Two of the applications that were here tonight were here last month. You didn't have quorum. That's why they were back tonight. And those are some of the things that we have to worry about. We have some other things. And our staff works extremely hard and extremely long to get this information out to you as quickly as we can. The other aspect that I would like to speak on is just being consistent. When it comes to zoning changes, as long as the land use is not modified, we can make those in a short period of time. But when it comes to large projects where they do have to make a land use change as well as a zoning change, that is going to tack on a significant amount of time, because depending on the size of the zoning change or depending on the size of the land use change will determine whether it has to be reviewed by the state as well. So those are just some of the other factors that we as staff have to address. If it's as simple as changing the zoning from R2 to R3 to allow to go from a duplex to a small multifamily apartment building, they're both residential. So that's a relatively simple change to make. We do have to be concerned about the increase in the density because that's going to have an impact on our infrastructure. So we have to make sure the infrastructure is suitable for those particular type of modifications to take place. But if we're changing the zoning from commercial to industrial, that's a major zoning change. That's a major land use change. So we would have to take those particular steps and those particular applications, and they would have to go through their process, which will take significantly longer than just a simple zoning change.
And I'll bring up one other thing. Developers don't get it right the first time. So it's not just staff. Sometimes I can't tell you how many iterations of plans and applications have been submitted for one application. It's never right the first time. So there's always a delay on the other side. And I hope there's no developers here. Anyway, so yeah, that's also an issue out of control of staff. If the applicant doesn't submit the right documentation, it cannot move forward. So, and that's always been a big delay. So on that, I mean, this is kind of, the next one is kind of on the next slide, please. this may not be in your wheelhouse, but we're thinking of that. We thought of asking this question. What assistance do you see that Opa-locka needs from outside agencies or funding sources to get where we want to be? The investment or other government programs, grants. Do you think that's a good thing, a bad thing? What are your thoughts? Should we go for broke and try to get everything we can? So it's just like basically a general question. And
I mean, I would also say, being a resident for a long time in Opa-locka, looking around, I also want to make sure that some of the business owners are also residents.
right.
So I would say when it comes down to, probably these government programs, probably getting some help for the residents that do want to become business owners here in Opa-locka, maybe get them some help. Because I'm pretty sure there's a lot of business owners here that may be a lot more interested in, probably doing some business here as well.
Right. There's nothing better than having a short commute to your business.
Mhm.
So
And keeping the money local.
keep the money local. That's another.
Yeah, you look around and you see a lot of big companies coming over here, and I'm pretty sure the residents, they're starting to question,
Right.
it's probably a short time until they start taking ours
Right.
away. So I think it's strong to build from within.
So maybe grant programs.
Grant for business owners, like resident business owners.
Right. Grant programs for resident business owners.
Business owners.
They do have, and we do have with the ARPA fund. It just has not been distributed yet.
Why is that?
I like to know. That's a good question. The funds are just sitting there. And they're they're businesses that can benefit from it. I think it was up to $1,500 or $1,800 within the zoning is what I've heard. Some can be nonprofit, it could be churches.
Right.
And believe me, when it first came out, I spread the word regarding the funding. Yet I haven't seen anything, and I still get questions. Hey, when are they going to give out the money for the, that they said that they were going to help the businesses but that's a good question
Okay.
to see.
Thank
where,
you. Yeah, it's a really
where's-
good question or comment. We kind of touched on what changes to the land development regulations would best move the city forward. Streamlining was one. You all sit and review and look at all the land development regulations. Are there any other changes that you think within the document that you see that could help move the city forward?
Probably I try to identify areas where the zoning might need to be changed because that would benefit. Or overlaid other than just the downtown.
Right. Okay. So land use is a vision. And so basically what you're saying is look at the zoning districts to see how they could possibly be changed to get to that vision.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, there's certain major corridors that are, in my opinion, probably under zone because there's residential there. And I get it, but
Right.
it's where in other cities I see there's a lot more development on similar.
Right. Yeah, they have the regulations in place already
Mhm.
to
The
accommodate
zoning
if
is in
it's
place to
right.
get, And I know I think I was on the board in 2015 when we went through all of this. We talked about that too.
What changes, the next one is basically looking at your public realm, what changes to public spaces, residential and commercial areas do you think are the highest priority?
I agree with Ms. Dominguez that we don't have enough restaurants and, a variety. We do have to go out of the city, which takes the money,
Now, we just approve public spaces. We have residential that have been implemented in commercial areas. However, like I stated before, we don't have restaurants or local supermarkets.
Mhm.
You know, we have, yeah, I have to go to the mini Walmart in Miami Gardens. Like, why can't we have a mini Walmart? I know that we have space. So why isn't that something that can come to residents here?
Do we have, so when we're talking about the Walmarts, the Targets, the big supermarkets, the Publix and Winn-Dixie or whatever, they're also looking for traffic count and the density. So the question now becomes, does the city of Opa-locka have the population to support a Walmart coming into the city? So I know some, like, just being a realtor, they look at the demographics, and if the demographics don't work for their structure, that's how they determine where they're gonna put that next grocery store, that next Walmart. And so, which I get her point. I get your point. We've got to do something to the city of Opa-locka. It's really one city in the entire Miami-Dade that's just underdeveloped, underused. I mean, downtown has looked like that forever. Like,
Right, no,
I remember going to the Arabian Nights, like, what happened? You know, like, what happened to that? Like, why are we not implementing those things that are tradition to the city of Opa-locka that brought people here from the outskirts, from inside of the city of Opa-locka, and it really increased the morale of the city.
Right.
I mean, just drive around.
I think given the population growth trend, if it continues, which I believe it will, we might have more incentive for some of those chains to come in. Obviously, it won't, probably not the real big ones because we don't have but if we can do anything to incentivize those type of chains to make it more, worth their while, then I'm not sure what that could be, but try to just pull them in.
Now, you guys don't think that might bring some problems for the residents that may not be able to probably afford some of these places? Some of these guys are gonna be coming in and probably making the city something that's probably not right now. Because, right now, I understand there's a lot of problems, but if we change the zoning, it's open for everybody. Anybody just come in and, some of these residents might not be able to, because that brings income everywhere. So the people coming in as well we got to make sure that those people coming in have an eye on the residents here in Opa-locka as well.
I don't understand what you're saying.
So when you change it to multi-use restaurants and all this stuff, if you have, let's just say, a business owner, a resident here that wants to do it, you're going to be competing with pretty much anybody, as opposed to,
Well, I think you have to have collaborations. If the people here want to do restaurants, they have the ability to do it. They have the grants to be able to do it. They have to go and seek it. And if they're not doing it, then you have to collaborate with other people to bring infrastructure into the city so it can progress, not regress, because that's what it's doing.
No, I'm not. That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that, since we're in the planning stages, is what I'm trying to say, incorporating business owners that are from Opa-locka from the very beginning, having that focus may balance that out, is what I'm saying, as opposed to opening it up and now a whole bunch, outside companies come in and take over. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at.
I
Incentivize.
don't think they
incentivize
take
the local
over. I think I don't think that they come in and take over, but they provide with all the new things that the city of Opa-locka is implementing, even the what's the document that we just created?
Oh,
They-
the storage,
Downtown,
the public storage.
Whatever. I can't think of the name of it, but we're implementing that. And although we can't require them to hire the city of Opa-locka residents, they may not even qualify. Who knows? But
You're talking about the development agreement.
And so thank you. We're implementing things for people to have some type of structure moving forward. But we also have to have some type of collaborations with maybe people that are on the outside to come into the inside of the city of Opa-locka to help us grow as a city, not them take over.
No, but that being that we're in the stages, that's what I'm talking about. That having that brings out the what you were just explaining, bringing both of them together, having that established now, as opposed to trying to establish that after the fact.
Right, so as part of what I'm thinking of in the development and redevelopment element of the comprehensive plan, try to focus or incentivize local businesses. But what you're talking about, I don't know if this is the right word, incubator, have outside experts and, restaurateurs or something, someone who's local that comes in and helps a local business owner to establish a good restaurant. And I think what you were saying is you'd rather have a local restaurant than maybe a McDonald's in a location. Get the local business owner to have a unique restaurant here and not just have a chain.
Correct, or
So-
like a mixture.
Or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, like a
Right,
mixture.
but not all chains.
Not
is
all
what you're-
chains
right,
or not
that's what
all,
you're saying, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think it is a good idea to, what we were talking about before, about placing oversight on is this true? You have requirements where the developers come in, they have to do a job fair, and they probably do it, but then who knows who they hired or what happened, and there's really no oversight to it. So even though, that point, I do see it, I agree with it. And,
True.
again, that's some other stuff.
And then again, there's a lot of, even if you put them out there, post and whatever jobs, there's a lot of people that don't want to work, unfortunately. I mean, it's sad because where I work at, I do interviews and I review applicants and call and make interviews. And if I call 10, maybe 3 will show up for an interview. So it's really hard. Maybe some people might not want to work. I mean, I know that when that 7-Eleven that they changed the name, started, the gas station on 135th and 32nd, I think it was 37th. I actually went there and I asked, I said, do you live in Opa-locka? And 3 of the employees do live in Opa-locka. One actually is a neighbor of mine. So I was happy to see that they do hire. So it depends if they really want to work. They want to work. They can put it out there, but if nobody applies and come, but then we need to do a better job as advertising. Advertising is very important, letting people know, not only through Facebook, and not everybody has Facebook, so we have to do a better job in advertising.
I think it would make sense for businesses to hire local because, you have the people who live here, you're gonna get less absence, less,
They're not stuck in traffic, like I said
Exactly.
before. They're
It's a
local.
no-brainer. It's something that I would think as a business owner, I would want to do there,
Okay,
This is more on the housing side. I don't know if there's something that we can add when homeowners and title companies are doing lien searches. But I think something needs to be added there where there's some type of packet with short question and answers. And I'll give you an example. Like I own properties in the city of Opa-locka, and I had no idea that there was a paint restriction. Like I just didn't know. And I've been doing real estate for 22 years. So just imagine if I don't know, how many of the residents don't know?
Yep.
And I get those calls a lot. Well, Claudia and I was fine because I painted my house green or purple, whatever the color is, and we didn't know. And now because they don't have the money to repaint, they're being fined.
Yep.
So I think we have to implement something where when people are purchasing, now whether they read it or not is their problem, but at least we're distributing the information amongst people who are coming to the city of Opa-locka.
like the do's and don'ts of home ownership.
Like a
know,
mini
making that up.
HOA packet,
Right.
a quick place where people can say, okay, wait, I need to get approval to paint my house. Or wait, I need an approval. I think windows and that kind of stuff is standard.
Right.
I think, but I don't know. Just simple things. Do I need a permit for a fence? Yes. here's where you go. Just a little
Guide.
guide on the basic things that you don't really know.
Yep.
I get a lot of those calls. And I think I've redirected quite a bit of them. But then you have homeowners who they're elderly, they get a limited amount of money, and now they can't afford another $1,500 to paint their house. So now what do you do?
So I'm gonna ask Mr. Gay, is there anything on your website and then is it transferred to like a document or paper, a mailer or anything?
My mailer.
There's certain information that's on our website, and our website is actually going through the process of being updated. So not everything is available on the website, whether it transfers to paper, and I can tell you now that a lot of information needs to be mailed out, and there's a significant cost as it relates to mailing out to all of the residents within the city. So that's something that and not everybody is comfortable with going to the website for information. And we're just getting to the point now where our website can be interactive, where you can do applications and do certain things on the website that transfers into documentation that city administration can react to. So we're still working things out. But there is some discussion as it relates to having that type of information sent out pretty much on some type of a timely basis, whether it be annual or biannual, but the information does need to be sent out.
We could look into that. And actually, we did something for some, for community. You know, do I need a permit to put in a fence? Do I need, how far back does my shed have to be from the property line? Those simple questions that I could share.
You find that out once you go to permitting. So the question would be, do I need a permit to install a shed?
Right.
Once the answer is yes, you know where to go at that
Right.
point, and then
Right.
you get that information.
The answer is I need a permit for everything. Basically.
Basically, yes.
I don't think so. I don't think
No,
you
I
need a
am just
permit for
joking, but
sod,
a lot, so.
Change your door, you do.
but not like for grass and some other little stuff. But there are some things that like
It's probably
you
easier,
just don't know.
probably easier to put a list that you don't need a permit for.
Right, that's
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you're right.
Any last comments, any guidance for us, before we go forward and,
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
What
yes. I think this would be a good opportunity to open it up to the public. So if there's some questions from people in the public, they can ask those as well.
Okay, well, we're having open discussion, yeah, but if anybody from the public wants to come up and
yeah, and then I invite the public or you all to look at the boards and place your dots where you live or have your business or whatever. That's part of this, this exercise, and we're gonna continue this in every meeting that we have to get as much data as possible. Thank you.
Hello, Nikisha Williams, 1200 Jan Avenue, Opa-locka, Florida, 33054. Love that you guys are doing this. Love some of these questions. I've been sitting here writing lots of answers to the questions, so I hope you'll bear with me. So some of the challenges that we have here: gentrification, climate change, low household income, education levels, ownership versus rental rate in Opa-locka. Obviously, that's housing ownership versus rental rate, sea level rise and the heat index. This is a food desert. Some of you mentioned that. There's also a really strong dirty corridor is what I call it. I don't know if that's the right language, but there's lots of businesses that deal in heavy and dangerous chemicals, which obviously affect the health of residents that I think we don't talk about enough. And then the impact of heavy trucks on our infrastructure, historic preservation, and then concentrated poverty is on some level what is happening here. Some opportunities. We don't talk enough about the fact that they are expanding the metro rail and that we have a tri-rail that will go into downtown. And that is a huge opportunity for us that I think we really have to talk about and build into this plan. I hate to say this, but an opportunity is gentrification, right? And so I think there's smart ways to go about it. And so hopefully we'll have that discussion. It's really nuanced, I understand, but we should talk about it. There is a re-energized downtown. I see it, it's slowly happening. And so I think there's something to build up on. There's an expansion of the airport that's happening. I don't know if anyone is noticing it. There's lots of building that's happening all around our airport. And if we are not in contact with the airport folks, we need to be, because we need to understand what they're doing so that we can benefit from it. There's a natural business corridor that is being built because of that airport that we should make sure that we are taking advantage of. There's a close proximity to the stadium, right? They're obviously building this metro rail to benefit the stadium. There will be a stop in downtown Opa-locka. Like, there is a natural connection that we should be taking advantage of. We have a strong Moorish identity that we should be building off of. I wholeheartedly believe that we are a small city, which gives us the opportunity to be bold and take chances. And so I would highly encourage us to think about that as we're thinking about what we build into this plan, City of Miami, like, it's hard for them to move on some level because they're so large. We're small, so we can do really innovative things. And then someone told me this and I didn't know it, but I think we're like a bird sanctuary here in Opa-locka. And so I thank you. And we don't talk about it enough. And so I think we have to consider, how are we protecting our status as a bird sanctuary, and how are we building in enough policies and procedures to make sure that we are continuing that. So some development trends, there's a green tech discussion that's happening on the county level. You see some of the new hiring that they're doing. There's an opportunity for us to take advantage of that. Again, the expansion of the airport, there is a natural development trend in terms of the businesses that we're able to attract, training that we're doing that could potentially transition into job opportunities. And then there's multi-use development, and we don't do enough of that here in Opa-locka. And so we should be looking at commercial corridor down at commercial building at the bottom, housing at the top. Downtown development opportunities. I agree wholeheartedly with the discussion. We need an anchor business here. Ideally, a grocery store is what we need, but it needs to be an anchor business that will then attract the other businesses. And there's lots of discussion. You guys had great discussion on the dais, and so I won't go into it, but I think we all can agree that that's necessary. And we have to stop prioritizing warehouses and storage facilities in our community if we are going to make some change. We keep bringing the exact same businesses here. We are going to get the exact same result if that's what we're doing. There should also be an analysis of what worked and what didn't work from the previous plan. I think someone on the board mentioned that. Yeah. It would be great if you guys could do an analysis and bring that back to us and help us understand like what didn't work from the last plan and use that to inform the new plan. Here are my perceptions of internal issues, but again, I defer to staff, but it seems like accountability could be an issue. There's a high turnover in the manager position, which obviously affects everyone else. I think there's a very manual permitting process that can be approved, and that I think we probably should consider applying for more grants. There's lots of federal funds and state funds out here that I don't know that we're benefiting from as a city, but I see other municipalities that are. The sixth question was something about outside assistance. We should be looking at low interest loans for historic preservation and economic development. We should be working with foundations, and we need to focus on the health outcomes of our community. Again, there are lots of dirty businesses here, and we are not doing enough to make sure that our residents are healthy. We are just getting the short end of the stick. And then there's the natural transportation corridor. How do we want to develop around it? How are we developing around the Metro Rail station and the Tri-Rail station? There's something intentional that can be done here. Changes to public spaces. Would love to see park enhancements. Would love to see a walkable city, a bikeable city in downtown. Again, how do we incorporate that into the Metro Rail and Tri-Rail corridor? Workout equipment in parks. I would love to see a dog park and just lots more trees. New city programs, question number 9. Can we attract market rate housing? I mentioned this early on, but Opa-locka is becoming a place where there's concentrated poverty. We are a small city. We have the opportunity to build intentionally. And so how are we building market rate housing? And again, I know there's some issues if we can actually attract market rate housing. So I know it's a little bit more complicated than saying it, but would love to dig into that. how do we discourage rental of single family homes? So there is this trend, and I hope everyone here knows that there are lots of investors who are buying up single family homes and they are changing communities. This is happening nationwide. I forget the name of the trend, but what happens is that all of a sudden you have a community that is now made up of a whole bunch of rental. And so there's this movement that happens as opposed to people anchoring down and living in a home for 30 years and caring for their space and their community. It is literally going to change lots of communities across our nation. How are we addressing that here in Opa-locka to make sure that we are encouraging the people who buy homes to live here? And so I'd be curious to know if there's something that we can do here. And then I think we should define the industry that we want to be known for. Is it connected to the airport? How are we training people? Like, there are just some natural opportunities. There's warehouses, right? So like, what is it that we want to be known for and how do we dig our heels into that? So for example, Wynwood is known for their arts and there are other communities that are known. They have like a particular identity. I think we need to figure that out for ourselves. And then if we can have some block associations and get people involved, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was really good.
Thank you for your input.
Yeah, a lot of good points.
Really good point.
Good evening, Chris Davis, 2301 Rutland Street, Opa-locka, Florida, 33054. I just want to thank the board and staff for moving forward in this process with the comprehensive plan. As you know, we're at a moment where we're now due for an update with the 5 to 7 year span. Looking at the comprehensive plan and several other documents that we have, i.e. the CRA finding a necessity and some of the founding documents. I just want to, just make a point that those documents should be cohesive and coordinate together. For example, if you look at the the comp plan, it speaks to certain relationships within the CRA and certain initiatives to partner with different organizations to develop housing. My goal or my wishes would be, to make sure that those plans coordinate together so that, there's no conflict when it's time to move initiatives forward. With that, that's all I had. I just wanted to make that point and ensure that as we're moving forward with the comp plan, that we do ensure that the downtown development strategy, as well as other documents that are living in the city all work together. Thank you.
Thank you. One else?
That was a lot to take in. So, but you're right on point, both of you, and that's part of this process to coordinate other, other documents with what we're doing. Make sure we get the information from those other documents into ours, relate back and forth. And yes, the Metro Rail is coming, and we're well aware of it. And actually, Mr. Gay and I were talking about the location or location of it the other, when was that, Monday, I guess. Yeah, so we're right with you. So we're going to take a picture of your notes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Gay.
I have a great appreciation for this format and a lot of the questions that you all have raised from not just the dais, but from the public as well, has been very educational, somewhat invigorating, somewhat aggressive in some aspects. And these are the things that we as staff talk about on a weekly basis. So don't think that these things are just not occurring. I tell my staff all the time, and I think I've told them this from day one, our job is to grow the city, period. Grow it in all aspects, from education, from employment opportunities, from just quality of life. And at the same time, we want to have a little fun, and we want to praise God that we're able to have this with us and that we don't have to go all of these other different places. Opa-locka is in a very unique position. I can tell you now, just from the affordable housing initiatives that we've had, that the interest is here. The interest is here. And we don't want to lose that interest. We hope that the federal government won't raise the interest rates too far to the point where, you know, we'll end up being in another recession or another period where you can't get anything done. And that, if you know the history of Opa-locka, Opa-locka has always been challenged just at the point when it's starting to have some success. That has been our history. Now it's time to change that history. So I think this exercise has been a very good exercise. I'm somewhat disappointed in the turnout, but we're going to have additional workshops throughout this entire process. Encourage your friends, encourage your neighbors, encourage your loved ones to come and be a part of it.
And
Thank
with
you,
that,
Mr.
I'm just going to wrap up. Mr. Gay will be the contact. So any, if you want to send him information, you think of something else, please, funnel any comments through Mr. Gay, then they'll come to us. But you were right on. I have to go back to you. Thank you, because you were right on track with a lot of your issues. And I still think, probably 10 years ago, we were talking about this here. Opa-locka is at the crossroads of North Dade, and that's been my opinion. You have, the tri-rail, you have all the roadways, the intersection of roadways, that's why you have a lot of these industries here, because of the traffic. It's easy in and out, and you'll be getting a metro rail. So again, that's a very important piece of information for you and where you are, because not everyone has that. So we're gonna try to get that into the mix too. So with that, I'm done with my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If there's nothing else. Okay, meeting adjourned then.